Welcome to the Disrupt Now podcast.
Episode 59.
Create the highest, grandest vision possible for your life because you become what you believe.
What makes people excited is progress. You don't have to be at the goal yet to feel alive again. You have to make progress.
Just do right. Right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul.
What matters most is finding your inner purpose.
Disrupt Now, a coaching program and a podcast designed by entrepreneur and visionary Natalie Viglione. In this podcast, we bring together disruptors and life game changers that will help empower you to disrupt status quo in order to progress you towards the ultimate vision you have of your life. We'll explore alternative topics with our guests whom are global healers, meditation gurus, transformational life teachers and coaches, women entrepreneurs that are fighting to make this world a better place, and people in general that are disrupting industries from education, fashion, technology, art, health, and much more. Please join us on this journey to move humanity to a much higher level of consciousness and create more mindful conversations.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Disrupt Now podcast. I'm Natalie Viglione, and I have a really amazing man with me today. I mean, every guest that we have is amazing. So that's like a redundancy. We don't even need to say it, but I'm really excited to have Steve Strother with me today. And the reason why is because we're focused on the conversation of men today. And he's the founder of Finding Men's Peace. He's a life coach for men. And he's passionate about helping men move from a place of frustration and overwhelm to a new place of joy and peace. And he's helping men to learn, grow, and evolve in this world by actually helping them break through the myths as to what quote unquote men are supposed to be in this world and how they can connect to their authentic selves. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that this is a really important topic to me, and we've focused on this before. And I love bringing in amazing perspectives because Steve actually focuses on helping men navigate challenges in their relationships or career, and then he helps them understand like the positive masculine aspects that can bring them into the world to help identify, process, and express what? Their authentic emotions. Yes, men, you are supposed to have these things. You have them. You have lots of them. And that's, in comparison to what we know as holding them in and like what men are taught. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast. I'm really glad to have this conversation with you today. It's imperative.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Natalie. It's good to be here. So yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, when we're talking about this topic, it's really important to keep it into the terms of like, okay, what is the best way for men to understand what we're really having a conversation about. And you know what? This is for you too, women, because women fit just as much into stereotypes or try to fit themselves into them also. And then therefore, if they're fitting in that box, they're putting men into a box. So it works both ways because this is it's supposed to be a balanced, harmonious relationship between at least fundamentally genders. And as you've noted, when we were kind of collaborating around this, and you were saying, we were talking about, like, what you were really talking about here is the sacred energies of the masculine energy and the feminine energy, right?
Yeah.
And, you're like, well, I don't really say that very often because it's true, because that's kind of like, people are like, what? Okay, like you just lost me, but for this audience, I think we're good because we're really talking about energy here. It's an energy that flows through us in this avatar. If we're going to go real far into that into that kind of esoteric conversation, but and what I like about you, Steve, is that you're introducing men to these masculine archetypes that exist.
Right. Sure.
That's awesome, because I think it's also important for men to understand kind of because archetypes are a really great way for us to be able to express ourselves into how we're showing up in the world, and then how we can move through and kind of change those energies. Or I shouldn't say change. I don't like that word sometimes, but I think express our highest potential.
Yeah.
That's better, right? All right. So Steve, let's talk about you. Let's talk about, okay. So, you are going through life, and you got to this point where you founded Finding Men's Peace, and you're doing life coaching, and helping to bring this to men that are ready for that kind of evolution, which 2020 could not be. This is the year of the rise of the masculine. So we'll go into that later. But what brought you here? How did you get here? What was the aha moment for you, so to speak, to traverse your way into this?
Yeah, good question. There were a lot of things kind of came together at once or over a period of time and built up to a point where they kind of hit me all at once. But more or less, I guess I'll start with feeling disconnected from what I saw as the stereotypical masculine. So what I saw being represented as kind of the typical man, I guess I would say, in the world, the media, and I'm talking social media, I'm talking movies, TV, the news, seeing that and feeling like that did not fit who I was. Like I knew I was a man, and I knew I was masculine, but I didn't feel like I was fitting that. So that was frustrating for me. And then at the same time, I had relationship issues with a marriage that was not doing well, and eventually ended up in a divorce, ending in divorce. And then also had challenges with my work environment, as far as just having a lot of frustration around that, not feeling like I could be myself at work. Like I had to meet certain expectations of other people in order to thrive at work. And it just got to a point where I wasn't really interested in doing that anymore, at least at that level. So all those things kind of came together at once, and of course, and that's what I help men with now. All of what I just mentioned are the key things I help men with now. But really, the big one was the not feeling like I met those masculine or male stereotypes, because that got me started doing research. That's when I started paying attention and seeing, because I have a lot of friends who are coaches. Most of them are women, and I saw a lot of posts from women about these awesome workshops they were doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to join this. I'm going to sign up. And then at the bottom of the advertisement, it was, look, women only. So I contacted one of the women that was offering that a workshop, and she's like, yeah, I know men need this too, but I don't feel like I'm in a position to help men in the way I can help women. And that's when it clicked for me. Like, oh, now I understand why women are doing this, and it's helping them a lot, but men need it too. And
Absolutely.
And I can do that. That's when I started realizing that I wanted to help other men. And it's also when I started, of course, the first thing I did was start doing my own research and learning about the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, learning about masculine archetypes and that type of thing. So.
That's very interesting. And divorce clubs, here we are, like we those, and it's interesting because I think that a common theme is that it's kind of healing through challenges that keep getting introduced into your path. And it probably wasn't like this. I mean, the moment of I want what's available to women only in all of these conversations that they're having. So the aha moment for you is really, well, I'll do this then. If no one else is showing up, or if I can't find it easily, then fine, I'll do it, which is awesome. There's that entrepreneurial spirit in there. And so let's talk about your career. What were you doing when you were feeling like you just didn't, feel like you could be your authentic self and you had to keep kind of wearing the mask, I think is a really good way to put it.
Yeah. So I was in a sales career. I was in sales for 20, almost 21 years, and selling electronic research content to libraries, mostly colleges and university libraries. So, the big thing there was the time commitment. It was a 50 to 60 hour time commitment per week, and it was a lot of travel, and there was good to that travel. I got to see a lot of cool places, but it kept me away from first of all, it kept me away from the family a lot, and it ate up a lot of time that I really wanted to be using to explore things like the sacred masculine or explore spiritual development. So I was feeling frustrated around that. So that has a lot to do with it. I could go a little further and just kind of some of the things that I felt like were necessary to try to move up the corporate ladder and that type of thing, or to be respected in some ways. And some of this is my own interpretation, but all of that kind of built up and to a point where I was just burnt out, and I was at a point for years, not just once, but for years, where I was burning out on the job at least twice a year.
Yeah. So. Yes, absolutely. Which is a really big indicator that something is wrong, right? Yeah. There's something, I dare say that your purpose started screaming at you, Steve.
Right. There you go.
And this is how I see this, the common thread for myself and for others is the common thread typically is a punch in the face moment, usually in some kind of tragedy, which divorce is. It's always for the better, to evolve.
That's right.
So it's not a devastating thing, because clearly there's some friction, there's something happening to make this so this partnership cannot work so it's not all, people always think it. I think people tend to go to the negative, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Usually I'm like, well, I'm happy for you, because that means that things have evolved, and that doesn't mean that it was all good. That doesn't mean good. It's just evolution at that point. But it usually takes these kinds of, smack our face moments to get us to wake up to see, okay, well, there is something more for me.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Exactly. So congratulations on stepping into the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And again, this isn't like it's easy either. I mean, that it's not like you step in and you're like, wee, this is fun. Millions of dollars are just coming to me every day.
Right.
No, that's not how things work. This is real. This is real life, not a movie. But let's talk about these archetypes. I'm very interested in your research and how you bring that into the conversation, with men and just in your teachings.
Sure.
Because what you're doing is really guiding men towards the understanding that these, and we'll talk about this next, but these myths, right, of what man is. This is what man is. Right. Because you're all walking around with gladiator outfits on, right? That's a man, right? Like, and a sword, and right. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What did you find?
Yeah. Absolutely. My research will probably never end on that, but because
Right.
there's so much to learn. But I was working with a coach at the time, and I am still working with him, who, as I was asking questions about a lot of things, and some of them were related to understanding men and the masculine and being disconnected from that stereotypical masculine. He recommended a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which I did purchase and read over a period of time. So those are the four really, and from my perspective right now, the four main mature masculine archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And like almost everything else, they have their shadow side, and they have their their more sacred side. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so for example, the king archetype, the king masculine archetype, in its light, or on the sacred side, it's that if you think of the imagery of a king, it's that king that is doing everything more from a service perspective than a power perspective. So it's not the king that's out there pillaging and pulling money out of people's pockets that hardly have any money at all. It's the king that's looking for ways to help the people that are around him or her, because grow, evolve, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an example. Warrior is another one that's pretty easy to think about. You think of a soldier, or of any type at any time in history. There's the warrior that's out there to destroy things just for the heck of it. Like, all right, I'm going to get involved in every single battle because I just like to fight. That's the shadow side. But there's the sacred side of the warrior too, because there are some things that need to be destroyed sometimes. And the warrior is the archetype that comes into play when it's time to do that, when it makes sense. When it makes sense to change something so that something better can come out of it. That's the warrior in the I guess in the sacred side of the archetype. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so what is I mean, lover's pretty easy, but what is a magician? What is that?
Magician, actually, to be honest, is the one I have the hardest time fully understanding. But the magician, the easiest, not easiest, but I guess for today's world, generally the magician is that the archetype or the person that is an expert at whatever the technology of the day is and can do crazy awesome things with it. So today, if you think about computer programmers, they're a type of magician. So on the more sacred or light side of it, they are creating these awesome things that help society. On the shadow side, you're starting to look at people that at hackers, people that hack into systems to destroy things or to make things worse or for their own benefit and not the benefit of everyone else. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, yeah, so kind of like a white and dark magic, light and dark magic.
Right, absolutely. That's right.
Yeah, this is interesting. I've been doing a lot of research on the gene keys, which goes into if people are familiar with the I Ching or things that are based on literally our genes and how we express them in this world, and how this book actually talks about when we're born, we have a blueprint. The blueprint is really astrologically and numerologically based on like when you're born. So the interesting thing in that is that for every person, there's a specific set of gene keys that have like as you express them, usually the first way we express them typically can be like the shadow, or, as we move into the expression and move into more of a higher consciousness and vibration with that specific thing. So the shadow side and this I dare say like consciousness side, when you're coming fully through and you understand how to express it in a positive way, is really interesting. And I think this goes into our next, set of conversations kind of around the energies. So let's talk about masculine and feminine energies for a minute, and how that really ropes into the work that you're doing with people, with men, because I think it's really great to talk about what an energy is in this topic, because I have come to realize that, some of us, we just everything is energy. Everything has a frequency and has an energy, because this world is just energy. And we won't get into all the other stuff, like, it's not just, even this isn't like material, it's just, so we won't go there, but let's go into the energy part. So everything, even the feminine and the masculine have an energy, and a frequency to them. So what have you found, and how do you bring this into your work?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I got into the studying the sacred masculine and feminine. I kind of going back to the what I was mentioning about having a lot of friends, and especially a lot of female friends that are coaches, and following them on Facebook and Instagram, and seeing how so many women really can connect with the sacred or the divine feminine, and almost never seeing a man post anything about the sacred. Well, never, and for a long time, never seeing a man post about the sacred or divine masculine. So I started, first of all, as a man, and at that time, thinking of male and masculine being synonyms, which they actually aren't, but I mean, we think of them, we tend to think that they are, but they're not. But at that time I was thinking of them as synonyms. So I'm like, oh, these women, they know all this stuff about the divine feminine, and they're posting about how the awesomeness of the divine feminine. And I'm like, is there such thing as the divine masculine? Because nobody is out there posting about it. So I started looking into that, and started finding some information gradually, and then refining my understanding of it. And so that's how I got started with it. And then, so gradually, and it took a while, because it takes some time to get from that place of male equals masculine, female equals feminine. It takes some time to kind of break that, and to see, again, it's one of those myths, really.
It is, yeah.
It takes some time to break it, because we're so used to thinking about things like that. But then I started to understand that, we actually all have access to all the masculine and feminine energies. Yeah, yes, a lot of men probably have more of the sacred or divine masculine than they do the sacred or divine feminine, and a lot of women probably have more sacred or divine feminine energy than they do the sacred or divine masculine. But that's not always true, and we all have access to all of it, and we can build those energies up when we need to, if we're aware of them. So one example I like to use, and really a lot of times we're moving from a strong position in a sacred masculine energy to a strong position in a sacred feminine energy in the same day. And
yeah.
So yeah, an example that I would use is, so taking action is an element or one of the sacred masculine energies. And creativity is a sacred feminine energy. If all you do is take action, you're going to run out of things to take action on, because you're not using your creativity to get to something else, something new. If all you do is create, then you're going to create a lot, but you're not ever going to do anything with it. So that's an example. Even in my former sales career, I in that career I was taking action a lot. I was taking action. In fact, that's one of the things that was wearing me down about it. Is it was a lot of taking action and very little creativity. But there was some. You have to be creative in some ways, because you have to know how to adjust what you're saying and how you're presenting according to who you're talking with, and what the scenario is in general, whether it's a big crowd or one person, and who they are, and how they're responding to you. So you do have to use some creativity there, but it was mostly taking action, and I really wanted to get to that place where I could be more creative. But when you think about the whole company, in sales, we were mostly taking action, but someone in other departments were creating those products. So there was creativity happening there. Someone was creating the marketing around those products. So there was creativity happening there. So you can take it to, it's not just at that personal level, but it's really at the bigger organization level. In that case, it could be that way for a community. It should be that way. Really, it really is that way.
It should. That's interesting. Yeah. So let's talk about the male and masculine not being synonymous, because I think that is definitely a myth that a lot of people have a hard time. And then this goes for female is not feminine. And I really speak to this from a personal experience as well. I actually have been far more masculine energy in my life than feminine. After divorce in my early 20s, I rose and I took over, where I could not find masculine energy to kind of harmonize with me. I took that on, and then very much saw myself leaning over into masculine energies far more than the feminine, which I think gets us completely out of alignment. As you mentioned, there needs to be harmony between these energies. So understanding them is super important.
Right.
So let's talk about the male and masculine not being the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, for anyone who identifies as a male, that's one thing. So you identify as a male for various reasons, and basically, it's in general, it's your sex, or it's your gender, I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it is, and it does not relate directly to the energies that you run, or that are strong for you. So again, sacred masculine energies, things like taking action, holding space, discernment, being present and aware, they're sacred masculine energies, and in a lot of cases they were, if you look back at the history of where they came from, they come from psychology, and so they were more or less named because someone was basically looking at these and they were still thinking kind of in stereotypical ways. I mean, in a lot of ways, they're like, oh, this is what I see in men most, or whatever, and that's true, but why? Why is it that taking action is something we see more in men than women, or at least we thought we did? And why is discernment, something we associate with men and not women, and why is compassion something we associate with women more than men, and why is creativity something we associate with women more than men? So I mean, really, even the names of the energies kind of date back to some stereotypes.
Totally.
So the energies are there, period, and we all have access to them, and in a lot of ways we've been taught, we've been socialized to think I'm a man, and so therefore I should be taking action, or I'm a man, I should be discerning.
Yep.
And I'm a woman, I should be compassionate, or I'm a man, I shouldn't be compassionate. I mean, things like that. But none of that's true. And so that's where male is not synonymous with masculine, female is not synonymous with feminine.
Totally.
Again, because we have access to all of that, and especially, and the trick is being aware of it. You know, once you're aware of it, and once you know what those energies are, that's when you can start balancing them. And so I didn't, until I looked into this on my own and realized, creativity and taking action and the balance between those. And it wasn't until I researched it and started thinking about it and looking at my own life, and how they apply there, I was in that position of taking action and a lot, but not really getting to my creative side. And my creative side was like starving. You know, I wanted to be an artist when I was 5 years old. You know,
Interesting.
You know, and eventually, not long after I was 5, I moved away from that for a lot of reasons. But I've always had that desire to create. And so now I'm realizing, you know, that's been there for a long time. And what can I do? I'm not sure what the answer there is yet, really. But so again, another way I'm evolving from this is, where is it that I can start creating? Because it definitely it's a side that I've ignored. It's an energy that I've ignored for a long time. Writing is one of them. I do like to write, and that's creative. But I really I have this gut feeling, this instinct that there's something else from a creativity standpoint out there for me, out there for me to discover, out there for me to bring into existence, I guess. So that's just something I will continue to work on and look at and explore until I find that right fit.
Absolutely. And you know, so this is part of my work and my business, but helping people understand that, you know, you and your purpose lends to creativity as you express it into the world.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. And I think the first part is so beneficial to understand that, like you said, we have access to all these energies, all of these different things, and that we need to balance them, bringing them into our life rather than thinking we need to be and express X. We need to exude and let these energies flow through us to bring us more harmony. And it's interesting. So I've been very creative my whole life. And when I was in sales and marketing in my corporate career for a very long time, working that ladder, also I realized that I was being asked more and more to step away from that myself. So I this is where the masculine started to really take over the energy of many of the energies. And it's very interesting. So I understand, and I very much understand your feeling of, you know, I've always been a writer, and I've always been, I've loved poetry and just expressing myself in that outlet. However, it's been very interesting. Some years ago, I found that painting was something that I very much needed to express. And then I moved away from it again. And then as I've started to step into like nature more and get reconnected with some other energies, painting has become a full on, you know, I need to express. And I have like, you know, now I'm looking around, I have all these paintings now. So it's interesting that as you step into that, there's so many forms, music, you know, art, you know, and art has like a billion different things. Writing, but there's creative writing, there's, you know, there's all kinds of different writings, you know, so it's exciting because once you start to understand that you don't have to fit into some box, like how great is that? How freeing does that feel for you right now? It's beautiful. And I think this goes into the next, like some of the myths. Let's talk about those other myths. Like, I think the one that is most, and it's sat at the top of our list that you built, is men are inherently not emotional. We call bullshit. bullshit on this one.
Sure,
So,
for sure.
let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I'm like most men that I know. Grew up and started covering my emotions up and burying them, at a pretty young age, and that was a societal thing. It still is. I mean, I think things are getting better, but it still really is. So there are family aspects to that, but there's a lot of peer pressure aspects to that. I mean, I learned, not to cry, especially in front of other boys, and then I learned not to get angry or express anger in other situations, like at home. That took longer, so you're looking at anger, you're looking at sadness, fear is another one. Basically boys eventually grow up not learning not to show their fear. I mean, as a form of protection, really.
Right.
And so a couple of things there. So that starts at a very early age, and it's very damaging, and so the myth is that men are not emotional, or not as emotional as women, and yeah, it is a myth. It's not true. And if you look at, for example, if you look at young boys, but before they have been socialized to and had those emotions socialized or scared out of them, or whatever you want to say, they are just as emotional as girls, if not more emotional. And so, so that's one thing. That's one thing to look at when it comes to that being a myth. Then the other thing that proves that it's a myth is that when a man does decide to do emotional work and connect to his emotions, he's emotional. I mean, and I've done that. I've done a lot of work around being able to identify my emotions, because that's something that happens when you start covering your emotions up. You forget how to identify them. You don't really know what emotion you're actually feeling a lot of times. A lot of times it all comes out as anger. So I did that. I did a lot of work to learn how to identify my emotions, to learn how to process them and express them, especially express them in some type of productive way. And so, I'm proof. I mean, any man that's done that work and has connected to their emotions is proof, because once you do, then you have access to all those emotions all over again. So it really shows that it is a product of how society brings men up with certain expectations about how they're not supposed to be sad, they're not supposed to be scared, and even anger. I mean, anger is a little more acceptable for some reason.
For men,
I think because
for sure.
Right. Yeah. For men, and I think it's because although we couldn't really express anger as much at home, it was okay for us to express it around our friends.
Yes.
And so I think I just thought of that actually, but I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah. And so it's really, I mean, and here's the other thing that I've realized in doing that work around emotions and working with a coach on that is actually a couple of coaches. Not only when you're burying your sadness and where you're burying your anger and you're burying your fear and you're burying everything except, nobody ever has any problem with you being happy, and so you end up with that one emotion that's okay, and you express it, but when you can, but when you're burying sadness, anger, fear, and everything else, you're not able to get to your full joy because you have so much anger, fear, sadness, and everything built up inside of you. Yeah, something can happen and you can be happy about it and you can feel some joy, but you can't get all the way to that joy because in your consciousness, in your mind, you've got that sadness about something that you have never resolved. You've got that fear about something you've never resolved. And because of that, you can't get all the way to that pure joy. And so I felt that. I mean, I have this pure joy feeling hit me now that never used to be there, and never used to hit me. And it comes in, sometimes it comes out of the blue. I'll just be on a walk and I'll see something that just strikes me, and the joy from it is so strong, and it just wasn't there before. Man, and part of one of the things that happens when you really get deep into joy is you cry. So if you're afraid to cry from sadness, you can't cry from joy either, basically. So that's another thing that I've learned is, that fear of sadness and expressing sadness, which meant that I was pushing that cry reaction away, was keeping me from experiencing the fullness of my joy too.
That's so beautiful. Yes. And that is so true. And something that I think is, and we know this, right? And I'm sure you've found this too, is that when you can't feel joy, when you don't have these highs and lows, when you don't have, it's very difficult to not be this monotonous, kind of almost robotic, non-reactionary, which it doesn't really work in the world, because it doesn't allow feedback.
Yeah.
That harmony doesn't exist, and that's difficult. I find a lot of men go to that side too. There's women too, but that you step away so much from emotions that you just become, I don't really know how else to put it. If you guys are not watching the video, you don't know what I'm doing, but basically just kind of status quo, I guess, or like whatever that is. But also emotions come out in ugly ways. That's the other thing here. I can say this from my personal experience, and I've seen this happen, in clients that I've coached, and I'm talking about, I'm working mainly with CEOs and people that are running businesses, and you see how their personal life affects the professional life because there's no barrier to it, right?
Right.
So it expresses itself. Like when I was married long time, I was in my early 20s. I was very young, and I was very confused, and I didn't know, my energies were all screwy, but I was so angry at him, and it was such a horrible relationship that I cheated on him. That was my horrible expression of anger and sadness.
Right.
And I was trying to hold them back, being like, everything is awesome. Everything was not awesome. Like,
Right.
So it expresses itself in an ugly way. And I think that's something that people don't, that's why things like that happen. It's not like we're out to intentionally always, not maybe some people, sure, but intentionally hurt people. But it's like a reactionary, because we're not dealing with something very important and we need to heal it.
Yep. That's right. Exactly.
Which I love this other myth that you had written, which is men don't need deep friendships with other men the way women need to have those deep relationships with women. Right. We call bullshit on that too, right?
Yes, we sure do. Absolutely.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I could not agree more. I think it is imperative.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Men need deep connections with other men, at least as much as women need deep connections with other women. And it's actually the number one thing men can do, from a self-care perspective, to really help improve their level of stress, to have those deep connections with other men, to have men that they know, that they know those other men have their backs, and that they have those other men's backs, and they can share anything that they need to share with them, that they can really talk about something that goes deeper than sports or
like real talk. Not
right,
like,
absolutely.
Are you fixing your motorcycle today? Like, yes. Whatever.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And this really boils down to this doesn't only help the man, it also helps whoever the man himself, but it also helps whoever he's in a relationship with, because without deep connections with other men, basically that puts a whole lot more pressure on the person that he's in a relationship with. And it could be a woman or it could be a man, but it puts a lot of pressure on that person you're in a relationship with, because that ends up being the only person you can ever talk to about anything deep, about any of your concerns. And so I'll talk about like a relationship between a man and a woman. In that relationship, if the man doesn't have deep connections, deep friendships with other men, means he's having to talk with the woman that he's in a relationship with about everything. And there are things she can't relate to. And there are things that, I mean, it basically just puts a whole lot of pressure on her, because he's always coming to her with everything. And there are certain things that men are going to be a better outlet, for that man to talk about.
Yep.
That's kind of a practical example of why men need those types of things. But it's just basically, and it helps it helps men grow. It helps men connect with each other. Men need to be able to connect with each other, be able to feel like they can trust other men in their lives. And you can't do that without having deeper friendships with other men in your life. So
totally. And what's really difficult, I think, around that too, because that is a need. What's difficult is to find men that can have that.
Right.
Like that becomes like a needle in the haystack, journey to find, which is too bad. Because I think that's why, like these gatherings that you were seeing women doing for women, men need to find the ones for men, whether it's online or in person, it doesn't matter. I mean, because I think the connection is connection, right?
Right.
And so you're a beautiful human and soul to be able to express that you need to be vulnerable too. You need to have a conversation around the fact that, shit, things suck right now, yo. And I'm going to talk about it. And I may accidentally cry because it's fucking shit right now. Or, it's just like we have to be able to express this stuff, and women cannot be the only ones that get to do this. And period. And I think that was, in the list of things of, to talk that can be talked about here that really are big ones. The other one of them was about this world is way too over feminized, about focused on, what the problems of women are at the end of the day. And I'm a woman, so I can say this, and I know that a lot of men feel weird saying that, but you know what? It's true. Like, stop. Why do we always have to swing the pendulum, guys? Like, come on. Like, we don't need to go from patriarch to matriarch. Why can't we be, I don't know, let's rule the world together? Like, why is this so hard of a concept for people to understand?
That's right.
So let's talk about that. Like, how do you feel in this world where now you're even afraid to, like, touch a woman? Like, for the fear of, like, I just, totally did something horrible. Like, I graced, well, we won't even talk about the extra layer of insanity happening right now on that note, but like in the workplaces, and it's gotten crazy.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So that is a myth. I mean, as far as the world being over feminized, if you're looking at a worldwide perspective, and what I look at that I think just proves that is again, and you look at most corporations, and their structure is designed a lot around men and the masculine and the patriarchy, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, well, at least an aspect of it. with once you went through a divorce and were out on your own, you ended up moving toward that more masculine energy of taking action. I think women have to adjust to that all the time. As far as, well, if you're going to fit into that corporate environment, if you're going to fit into politics, if you look at women in politics, they usually run a lot of masculine energy too. So that's where I look at that as being a myth. And that when you really look at the major structures of the world we live in right now, they're still very masculine.
Absolutely.
Politics, corporations, with politics comes war. I think war is a more masculine thing and not a sacred masculine. I think we're looking more at shadow masculine there.
100%.
So that's where I think those things point to the fact that no, the world's not over feminized, and I totally agree. I mean, the ultimate, really goal should be now moving to a point where there's balance. Bringing the feminine back up to a point where it's as strong as the masculine, and not only in ourselves but in the world and around us, totally. in corporations, in politics, government. Our families, et cetera. So,
and not in that fear-based way, not like bringing feminine in because men are too scared of women, meaning, especially more in this corporate conversation, right?
Right.
Like we have to have X number because, well, people say, it's like, why don't we bring this balance? And women shouldn't, think that we need to over feminize to bring balance, because that's just that pendulum swinging. So it's not over feminized and it's not over masculinized. It's just that we still have these places that we're like living, and that's the place that's odd, because I just don't understand why we cannot see genders at that very basic fundamental level as equals.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And because we can, it's about perspective. And so I think, that's I think that's a really big, huge myth. Again, it's not either or, it's just we have specific places, and this is what places us back into those stereotypes. And then you just can see how this cycle keeps going, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, I love your work, and I love that you're bringing this to men's attention and helping them find peace in their lives, because I also do believe that women are actually kind of over feminizing their groups, meaning we're focused so much on for women only because it's been such a men's club world in so many ways. But I really look forward to being able to have beautiful, harmonious balances in these. But I do believe that, like for you, you're so, you coming from your perspective, other men need to see themselves mirrored in you as a man, that, and kind of how to move through these things. And I do get, while women can coach men, sometimes I really do feel like we want to see ourselves mirrored in the person that's speaking to us. So sometimes it's just not that easy, and or based on our experiences.
Right, absolutely. Yes.
So the biggest concept here that we should pull through all of this is that therapy, coaching, I really call coaching guidance because I just like the word better.
Sure. Like
it's like, because it's about guiding people through on their journey through traversing, through some heavy, things, and that's so important to have. And so everyone should have one or two, if not all the time, at least, when you're feeling, especially right now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's just and also understanding these energies and how we can truly start to harmonize. I mean, I think harmony is peace.
Yep. Right.
And what I wanted to say also is that I've read in many places in things that were written before 2020 hit, talking about 2020 being the rise of the masculine, because masculine energy, because this world needs protection, but we need it from a place of men like you in that space, because I think that let's just say that there's not one person in power today on any, I don't care about any political party, does not matter. They're narcissists, and most of them are sociopaths. And that's shadow energies at its best.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So imagine having a bunch of conscious men and women running around trying to help everybody. Like, that's just that's how we get to the new world, like a new world, so this is big work. Work.
Right.
All right. So speaking of big work, what have you got coming up? Like, what do people need to know about you and how they can reach out to you and connect with you? And then please think about the possibility of getting a coach, because it's so important. And you can call it a coach, or you can call it a guide, or you call it whatever you want.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of using the word guide there.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So what I have going on is I offer both group coaching, so coaching in a group environment, so that the nice thing about group coaching is that not only do you get coaching from a coach, but you're in a group, so you actually the people in the group get to help each other out too, and you learn a lot more that way too.
Yeah.
So group coaching is great, but I also offer like a one-on-one coaching, both one-on-one, related to, like, if you are struggling in your relationship, or if you are struggling in your career, or both, or if you are feeling that disconnect between who you are as a man versus the stereotypical masculine, I offer one-on-one coaching around those topics. And then for men who are really ready to make that next jump, to kind of look at everything we just talked about today and work through all of that, to get to that place, really to transform. I offer a one-on-one coaching intensive. So that is like a 1-year program. So I have that as well. So
awesome. And peacefulmen.com.
That's right. Yep. That's the website. The name of the business is Finding Men's Peace, but the website is peacefulmen.com. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. The best way to see what it is I'm doing, to get in touch with me, and those kind of things, for sure.
That's amazing. And I would like to also say that I started a brand called the Smart Start series. If you've been listening, you know that I've mentioned this before, but it's about personal development, online education, and every topic is wrapped around the mind, body, and soul. SmartStartSeries.com. And I'm really excited to announce that Steve is offering his guidance to that group, and will be offering, discounts, things of that nature to that audience. And I'm really excited about this, because and I've had some other males that have come into the program to teach some topics, but I am telling you, getting men to be part of personal development activities has been like, because these things go a little deeper than your surface level stuff, right? Yes. So anyway, I'm really excited for that, and I'm really excited to hopefully really help men find peace, and really help women through men that are finding peace find peace. Because it's all connected. I mean, whether, it doesn't matter what kind of relationships you're in, we're all trying to harmonize together. So finding peace really should be our goal for 2020 and beyond, because we're in for some crazy shit, you guys. So just hold on, and let's find peace together.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Really quick, that's another thing that's really important. I'm glad you mentioned it. there aren't a lot of men right now that are out there doing this type of work when you compare it to the number of women that are.
Yep.
And that's creating a big imbalance. There are
It
so many
is.
women that are doing the work to that personal development and that spiritual development work. And men are, so far up until now, I mean, that's changing, but men have really shied away from it. And that's part of my big goal too, is to help men grow through that personal and spiritual development.
Yes.
So that men are rising up to the level that women are in general already at. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Rise up in this sacred masculinity.
That's right. Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
You have a great energy about you, Steve. I like, it's very grounding. Like, it's like, yeah, this, and for everybody listening to the audio, you should go go watch the video, because you can see how grounded Steve is in this, and I think that's important too, because there's a lot of spiritual narcissists out there today, and a bunch of coaches that give coaches bad names because they're liars and they're not grounded. You can really see the difference. And so anyway, thank you so much, Steve, for bringing your story, for sharing this wisdom with us. And I really look forward to the Smart Start series and building that out. And I look forward to possibly bringing you back and having you talk more about how this, as this year evolves, I think, as we're creating this potential, and what many are saying is a great awakening. I would love to hear how you're finding and traversing that in your work, and how you're feeling in it too, because I love these conversations where we're harmonizing at just the most basic fundamental gender level. Period.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. I look forward to what's next, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and please, in the meantime, if you know anyone or you want to pitch your story, please get in touch with us at disruptnowprogram.com, or you can get in touch with me on Instagram at disruptwithnatalie. Of course, all the information is on our website. Again, thank you, and in the meantime, remember, no status quo.